From CBS Sports, fantasy football guru extraordinaire. I believe, I could be wrong, I think this might be year 10 that we've been together. Can't be that long. It's got to be close. The one, the only, Dave Richard. Dave and Katie, good morning.
Everybody, hello. It's good to be back on. Dave, it's great to hear your voice. I think it has been 10 years.
I think this is
10 years of outstanding conversations. And might I add, no, I actually meant that. I'm not joking around. This is really the only place that I can go to where I feel like I can, let me be me a little bit. And when I've got some problems with how I do my work, I can kind of lay on the proverbial couch and let Dave be my fantasy therapist. No one else. Yeah. There's literally nobody else out there who can do that for me. So
we've had these
Carmichael Dave, PhD.
We've gone through these, and it's one of the things I love about you is you don't just, fill column space and podcast minutes. You really, 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 truly, put your heart and soul and you treat your advice as if it was and generally is advice you would do in your own leagues. And hey, you make predictions. There's going to be some stinkers and there's also going to be the Alfs of the world and different ones that you've nailed more often than not over the years. So I always appreciate that you want everybody who listens to you to legitimately win their fantasy leagues.
It's really the genesis of everything that we do at CBS Sports. Like, we all play in our fantasy leagues and we all want to win, but we really don't withhold much information. And the information that we do withhold, we kind of have an interesting way of spinning it, and no one really can tell. But if we know somebody's going to stink, we're going to rank them accordingly.
Sure.
If we think somebody's going to be awesome, we rank them accordingly. We don't hold back at all.
Everybody's got, I would hope, drafts coming up between now and the start of the season next Thursday. A lot to get to in a short amount of time because I know you're incredibly busy, a very wanted man, if you will. Let's start with our local San Francisco 49ers. Katie and I were talking about this earlier with the report that Christian McCaffrey's minutes may be a little bit reduced. His snap count may be a little bit reduced. Elijah Mitchell, Tyrion Davis-Price getting some of those as they want him for the entire year and to be peaking into the playoffs. So two-parter here for you. Number one, does that do anything in your mind to his draft value and draft placement? Secondly, Dave, are the San Francisco 49ers the toughest team in the NFL to fantasy draft for?
I don't think that they're necessarily the toughest because I think fantasy managers can look at Christian McCaffrey and know that he's worthy of being the first running back off the board. And I can get into the story that you were talking about as well. I've dug into that. I dug into it months ago, actually, and I've got some pretty good information that I think you'll like. I think people view Deebo Samuel as a top 20 type of fantasy player, more of an offensive weapon than a wide receiver, but you start him at wide receiver, and I think he's going to be good. Brandon Aiyuk is somebody everybody gets excited about. Sometimes he comes through. Last year he did, tons of numbers. This year, we'll see. I think it really depends on who else stays healthy and how well Brock Purdy finds him from game to game. Kittle is the interesting one. We see George Kittle getting drafted around 50th overall in fantasy. And I think it's just based on what he's been doing year after year. Last year, 11 touchdowns. It's amazing. But he had a 5-year low in catches per game and yards per game last year. And when everybody was healthy over the last 5 games for the 49ers, Kittle was averaging 4.2 targets per game. So that makes me a little bit nervous about buying into him with a top 50 pick. This sounds so gross. I hate saying it, but I'm kind of fading George Kittle this year.
Wow.
Going with either an elite tight end like Kelsey or Andrews with one of my first 3 picks, or I'm going to wait and draft somebody who isn't going to be as productive as George Kittle, but he won't cost me a top 50 pick like George Kittle will. I'm going to let somebody else draft George Kittle in my fantasy leagues because there are so many other great options in that offense. I don't know if Kittle can replicate what he's done in the past. Now, let's talk about Elijah Mitchell and Tyrion Davis-Price, everybody else in this offense. I looked at the 49ers games once they got McCaffrey. Week 8 through their first 2 playoff games. I throw out the playoff game against Philadelphia.
Sure.
That should be wiped from everybody's memory. I'm sorry for bringing it up.
Yeah.
Running backs not named Christian McCaffrey and including Deebo Samuel. This is from week 8 through the first 2 playoff games. 13 carries inside the 10.
Wow.
Non-McCaffrey players, including Deebo, 6 touches inside the 5. Non-McCaffrey players, including Deebo, 2 touches at the goal line. There was a lot of second half garbage time for Mitchell. Mitchell only once played more than half as many snaps as Christian McCaffrey. He was a non-factor in short yardage goal line situations. He played a total of 3 third down snaps between week 8 and the divisional playoff game. I am not convinced that Elijah Mitchell is going to be a huge problem for Christian McCaffrey. I think Mitchell is going to be the guy who plays in non-consequential situations, 2nd and 8 from the 35-yard line, their own 35-yard line, some stuff like that. When it's a blowout win or a blowout loss, you'll see more of Mitchell than you might McCaffrey. But when they're in the red zone, why in the world would they keep Christian McCaffrey on the sideline? He's going to be out there playing. Those high-value touches will be there for Christian McCaffrey. He averaged over 20 PPR fantasy points per game with the 49ers last year. Fully expect him to do it again. He is my second favorite player in PPR leagues, among anybody in the universe, David.
Wow.
And in non-PPR leagues, he's the 101. I would take him first overall if catches do not count.
It's interesting because it's been so long since I've played fantasy football, because the last time I did it was when we drafted for our show, Dave.
That's right.
But I think that everyone does, like, they have a different experience with fantasy football. Some people are really, really into it. Some it's like a fun thing to do with their friends or whatever. So for those fun people, you can't control where you're picking, right? So when it comes to quarterback, I think that's the primary one that everyone is worried about, who they draft. So if you have kind of a lower pick, who is like the dark horse, not big name that you're like, okay, this is a good QB pick for you?
And these are quarterbacks that you wouldn't even consider taking with like your first 6 picks, Katie. This is just not in that range. This is what you're looking for, kind of cheaper quarterbacks on draft day who could perform like a top 5 quarterback might. The first thing I want to say is that unless you can start 2 quarterbacks in your league, you shouldn't take a quarterback in round 1. I know it sounds silly, and you guys will be in your drafts this weekend, and Patrick Mahomes will be taken in round 1. I think it's a mistake. You're passing up on too many other great players at other positions. You need to fill your lineup. You also should not take a quarterback and a tight end with 2 of your first 5 picks unless it's a small league, 8 teams, 10 teams, stuff like that. In those leagues, sure, go for it. Knock yourself out. But in 12-team leagues, 14-team leagues, but you got to go and get running backs and wide receivers on your team. It's important. Okay, 2 quarterbacks to tell you about. Number 1, Tua Tagovailoa in Miami. I know everybody's worried about the concussions and him missing playing time. It's all true. But he also is at the command of an outstanding offense with 2 amazing wide receivers. And I think that this offense is going to continue to put up gaudy numbers, lots of yards after the catch for both Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. They are going to be nightmares for every defense that they play. Tua Tagovailoa, we're talking around pick 100 overall, somewhere in that range. You draft him, you get another quarterback later on, you should be good to go. If it's a super flex league, you draft Tua, and then with one of your last 6 picks, draft his real-life backup, Mike White, because I think he's going to end up being pretty good too. The other quarterback is Anthony Richardson, the rookie for Indianapolis. If you saw him play in his last preseason game, you saw him complete 6 of 17 passes. That's not so good. But a lot of those passes were downfield. It was almost like the Colts were purposely trying to get their downfield pass game going. Obviously, if he's throwing shorter passes, which is par for the course in RPO offenses, he's going to complete a lot more of those. So don't sweat the 6 for 17. And the dude was a running monster at Florida, and he has proven to be a running monster again. And if Jonathan Taylor's not playing for the Colts, who else is going to run the football? It's going to be Anthony Richardson. You're looking at a candidate for 1,000 rushing yards, if not a record with like 1,200 rushing yards. And what he gives you as a passer, it's not going to be outstanding, but he's got the potential to do it because he's got such a cannon. If Indianapolis can find a receiver or 2 that can outrun defenses, all Richardson has to do is avoid pass rush pressure, and he can do that with his legs. And then he just chucks it 60 yards downfield. Someone camps out under it, and all of a sudden that's worth 12 points for Anthony Richardson. He's getting drafted. His average draft position is like 3 rounds after anybody that you would take with a top 10 pick. I think he should be right after Tua Tagovailoa, a top 12 type of fantasy quarterback who you grab. And then again, like Tua, you draft another quarterback behind them in case Anthony Richardson struggles to begin the season.
Dave Richard, just a quick true or false, because I want to be able to tell everyone where, if they forgot where to find you, what's going on. Just true or false. Dalvin Cook will not affect Breece Hall as much as some people think he will. True or false?
I think that's going to end up being false, Dave.
Okay. Aaron Rodgers, Wilson, the rookie last year, will be a top 7 quarterback wide receiver combo.
False. Wilson will hold up his end of the bargain.
Bijan Robinson is worth the hype.
True.
Cordero Patterson is worth a mid-round pick.
Are you crazy?
I'm just true or false. That's all I'm saying. I'm just asking.
I don't know if I would take him in a 15-round draft.
That's what I would have said too, probably.
No, flying.
Finally, Deshaun Watson will end up starting for successful fantasy league teams this year.
I would take him over Tua and Richardson.
Wow.
True.
Where can people just glean, even if by osmosis, the wisdom of CBS Sports' Dave Richard?
Let's face it, a lot of people in Sactown are going to cram for their fantasy drafts. The best place to do it is actually on YouTube. Go to YouTube, search for Fantasy Football Today. That's the name of the CBS Sports Fantasy Football Show. We've got tons of episodes, tons of topics, all designed to help you crush your draft, feel confident walking out of there, and then go on to win your fantasy league.
You're the best in the world. We always love having you around. Thank you so much, David. Have a wonderful day and an even better weekend.
I will talk to you guys next Friday.
All right.
Take care.
Go Knowles.
Oh, that's not nice. That's not nice.
I'm allergic to it.
I'm glad you're keeping me on the air. You cannot end the segment with that little dig at me.
Yeah, I'm sorry. You're right. All right. Hey, best of luck to both teams. Right? No?
Now you're a lame-o.
I'll talk to you Friday. That's Dave Richard. We'll take a quick break. When we come back,